Stiperstones. Hopefully you're looking at some nice drone footage right now that categorically hasn't been taken over the nature reserve, because there's a ban over flying drones over the nature reserve for good reason. But around the nature reserve is some wonderful countryside, just some of the best countryside.
It really is some of the best one, isn't it?
I mean, it's just like in either direction, towards Corndon or, you know, further towards Shrewsbury. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And like we're on the kind of edge of light type of territory, so they're quite nice high, medium to high clouds. There is a bit on the horizon, so we'll see. But yeah, just a short walk up to Cranby Rock, isn't it, first, and then...
Yeah, Cranby Rock is the first one. I can never remember the sequence of all the names of them, to be honest, but it kind of doesn't really matter. Stiperstones there. Yeah. But yeah, Cranby Rock's nice. No, they're all basically it's a kind of quartzite ridge line, isn't it? Mm. So lots of nice reflective stone.
Yeah, so actually this is a bit of a deceptive climb, actually, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a piece of piss, and every time I come here, I'm like,
hang on a
Jesus.
second. Yeah.
Especially if it's in the morning, if there's an early sunrise.
It's one of those ones that's got an angle that says you can do this really fast, and it's pretty easy going underfoot. But the incline is such, isn't it? It just takes your legs after a few minutes. So we'll apologise in advance for the puffing in there. It's going to happen soon.
Yeah, and actually the coming down bit is also a bit hazardous. It's very tricky underfoot, but
yeah,
it's really a sensational location. And actually surprisingly unpopular, even with tourists. Although you can catch it on the right day, it can be quite busy, but there's a superb wildlife here, actually, and it's very rich and diverse. Because behind us is the Longmynd, which is a lot more famous, and the drive across the Burway. But yeah, it's very unusual because the ridge line kind of goes on for about 4 miles, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
All the way from Nipstone to... I can't remember what it's called, actually.
It's a classic example here, actually. You know, we've talked about this on other episodes, but it's a classic example of a location that, because it hasn't got particularly good amenities and the access is more tricky, it's just so much quieter, which I obviously prefer. But
from a photography point of view, it's quite interesting, especially for sunrise. I think for sunset, rather, because sunrise is a bit. I've had lots of damp squibs, and I don't think it, for some reason, it just doesn't seem to slap as hard. The sunset, however, you get the whole open side of the hill over where we're going right now, and you get, as you said earlier, the very kind of rich, naturally kind of shimmery rock that reflects all of the colours from the sun.
And the afterglow.
Yeah.
It's the key. It stays light kind of half an hour after sunset, the actual rock itself. Yeah. The only issue I have up here sometimes is the heather obviously stays very dark. It really absorbs the light, so it gets quite contrasty, doesn't it?
Yeah. There's the Mynd. Just sublime. Actually, you know what? I love the gorse as well.
Just make out the top of the Wrekin. Yeah. Just the beginning. Actually, this is a good place in June for, so another month away, images looking to the Wrekin sunrise.
Right, okay.
Sunrise is pretty much over the top of it. So.
There's kind of a nice sequence of rocks starting to get kind of more and more interesting as you walk up the path, I should say.
Yeah.
But actually once we reach the top of this brow, there's a sensational view over to Corndon.
Yeah.
And the valley sort of falls away. Again, it's one of those, another typically diverse and bipolar element to Shropshire landscape, because I think this is really different than Caraddock or one of those places we've done previously, like Clee Hill. You know, this is a lot more kind of untouched, I would say. It's like all the elements of Clee Hill, that the man-made stuff, well, you don't have that here.
No. Pretty much that's why the Longmynd's called the Longmynd.
Yeah.
You see, That's actually, the Stiperstones ridge is pretty much the same length, isn't it? Just starts a bit further north and ends slightly sooner. But that ridge line there, dropping down probably to Edgeton maybe, well it's called Rabbit Warren actually, the bottom end of the Longmynd. And yeah, so the whole of this whole flank of the hill here is a pretty steep escarpment really. Hasn't got all the deep valleys that the other side has.
It's just interesting looking clouds coming up here.
Yeah. I've been chased off of this hill by quite a few storms in the past actually.
Yeah, I took my kids up here once in the winter and they ended up both of them crying, and that's very unusual for my two. They're usually pretty good on hills, but it can be absolutely freezing up here.
Yeah.
It's like Clee Hill, it's got its own little microclimate.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're just marvelling at this light. This is pretty much what we are having printed on cards. So it's these kind of amazing conditions, and the quality of the light here is fantastic. So to be capturing that and to be making it into a really fine range of cards, I'm quite proud about the idea actually. Well, basically, I think it's going to be quite an exciting range of cards that I think, without blowing our trumpets too loudly, I think probably does the county justice.
Yeah.
It's the kind of light that we go out and explore and enjoy isn't always celebrated in kind of the typical kind of greetings card and calendar market, but I think my experience over the years has been that people actually really enjoy that kind of thing. So
it's applying the landscape photography workflow and work ethic to greetings cards, and why shouldn't people have greetings cards with the countryside at its best?
Yes.
Rather than that it's at its most bland, especially here. The thing is, it's testament to the county that even at its most bland, it's still very picturesque.
Yes.
But,
but we're certainly going away from the chocolate box kind of idea, aren't we? I mean, those of you who already know our style and have seen some of the other episodes will know the kind of thing we produce, and that effectively is what the cards are, those kind of images.
So welcome back to Catching the Light with Alan Titchmarsh and
Monty Don.
Yeah. So today we're at one of the most interesting places in Shropshire, Stiperstones, which is a nature reserve, hence the lack of sexy drone shots, because it's not allowed in here. So we're just on the top of the ridge right now, just about a mile up from the car park, and we've just been greeted by quite a wonderful, crunchy, stormy sky. Almost a kind of wintry feel to it, isn't it, really? But,
yeah.
Almost immediately we can see how reflective these rocks are. Was it anthracite or something like that? What is it?
Quartzite, I think.
I
think it's quartzite, but it's not the pure white kind of crystalline form,
but yeah, they've got almost ready-made compositions along the line, because everything kind of snakes in and out, and it's especially in this direction.
Yeah. This was actually probably the first location I came to. I don't mean having moved to Shropshire, but this is the first location I came to where I actually really understood the colour of the hills in Shropshire, and it was a similar kind of day. And when you look to all the horizons, pretty much everything's blue. I mean, obviously we've got the sunlit sections, it's not, but that kind of blue hue in everything there is here. Even the greens, if you look behind you, the greens over this way are intensely blue. It's so that kind of blue remembered hills theme. You get it completely when you've been somewhere like this. And you can experience it, see it yourself.
Yeah, it's when you see it like in this sort of context, it's like, well, it's not simply a romanticisation or a affectation. It's real,
And actually, a lot of the time, when you read those kind of old poems and old literature, you tend to think of it that way, as it's being romanticised, but actually, it often isn't. It often is pretty accurate in the description.
It's phenomenal.
It's just right now. It's the perfect example of really what the rock does for you here, in that you've got that glow off the front side of it, which helps with the rock projecting into the sky like that, it can often be a really difficult thing to control and manage in camera. But with it being lit like that, it's lifting the light in the rock by a couple of stops just by the nature of the lightness of it. We've got some lovely blue light here as well on the back of the rock, reflecting from the sky behind. So the colour contrast there is fantastic for, right out of the box really.
Yeah, so this is the first little outcrop of rock, and it's really visibly ashy and glowing.
Yeah. You can't see it in camera, but we're just getting the first glimpse of the trig point now on the top of Manstone as well. So this is the second highest hill in Shropshire.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think that's right. I'll have to go and check. We can put a little disclaimer in if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it goes Brownclea, Stiperstones. Out there, there's a lovely bit of light actually, which is probably on the Berwyn Mountains, kind of Llangollen way.
Looks a bit squally, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Actually?
Certainly isn't the kind of place you want to come fell running.
They do though, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
So we're just approaching the Manstone, and I've no idea why it's called that.
No.
Who knows?
Yeah.
One of those crazy folklore things, because I don't know why it would be called the Manstone.
That's got a cheeky grin. That's the reason.
Yeah, so this is the...
Well, I have to say, this is absolute classic Stiperstones conditions, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you ever been here where it hasn't been like this?
Oh, once.
What, really?
Yeah, and it was completely mill pond calm. That was really unusual. Yeah, most of the time it's like this.
One of my favourite spots.
Yeah.
I'll probably say that every time I go anywhere here, but... Actually, do you know what is really nice here is the way there's so many of these sections of rock point at other sections. There are so many places you go where the foreground is pointing in the wrong direction. It's kind of pointing away from the subject matter at the back of the frame. And something like here, the Devil's Chair, these rocks, like kind of jagged fingers pointing straight at it. That works a treat. You've got other sets of rocks which are pointing over here, at Corndon Hill. It's just great running foregrounds here. So. Fantastic.
This side of the path is almost as interesting as that side, but there's a wonderful kind of Castle Gwent type of kind of shark fin character to it. But yeah, actually even now you can see parts of it catching there's a tiny little bit of light poking through.
Yeah, and that's the shaded side, so the other side is going to have the same luminosity as the rocks here. And that, depending on where you're thinking, I love some of these. There's some of those Jacob ladders. Look, some of those beams come across this landscape.
Yeah.
It could be fantastic.
I know.
So what I don't want lots of middle ground, because of what I was saying earlier on with the heather being so dark. It's finding somewhere where we're not going to drop into a hole as well. Look at this.
God.
It's actually quite complicated, but it's quite a complex set of shapes. But it works for me. I might want a little bit more simplicity at the very front of the frame. I find that if I go for this, if I just focus out there and don't focus down here, then you get a much better sense of how the foreground works. And those little movements I'm making now completely change those relationships. I do like that one single rock out there, but it's actually quite dark, isn't it? One of the darker rocks. That works quite nicely. Clouds are great at the moment. Top of the Devil's Chair from here.
Yeah.
It really does look, as you say, something like the Castle of Windsor. Probably even Anachigach Ridge in Scotland. That's the kind of terrain that you're walking on there.
So currently at the top of the Devil's Chair, which is a bit of a leery climb, but there is an interesting composition that I found last year. The looks down the V of the Devil's Chair towards the trig point. And actually at the moment the cloud is very nice indeed. It's a bit leery, lots of drop down either side, but this is a potentially good composition. We're just struggling for a bit of light at the moment.
I'd look at this in landscape format and I didn't really like it. Or landscape shape, what am I talking about? But I think portrait wise it works an absolute treat. What I wanted to do is give it a sense of height. We've got this enormous drop on the right which I can't even see in the frame, but I want that same sense that there's the big drop here. So what I've got is lots of different ribs all running through. They all kind of seem to converge on that lump of rock there, but then you've got the second one which bounces you as a stepping stone out into the frame. So, and then Middletown Hill in the distance, right on the Welsh border, that's near Welshpool. And that's kind of the finishing point of the picture really, under that lovely curl of cloud. It's a shame right now that the light isn't particularly playing ball.
So on this particular occasion, we're deciding to use our YouTuber privilege and cut directly to a time when the light is much better.
Wow, this is a smorgasbord of everything, foreground and background, isn't it?
I almost like what the footpath has done to it as well. It's sort of just softened out the...
Yeah.
It's a nice comp towards the tumulus up there, isn't it?
Yeah, there is, yeah. There's heather growing out the rock right here as well, all the way along it, so although that's all quaking in the wind. But.
See, where are we now? We're in start of September. Where do you reckon this heather is?
A couple of weeks and it won't be here. Well, like I mentioned earlier on, it's if we get if this dry spell carries on for a week and it's hot and dry, it'll just push it on really fast.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean there's not going to be any. I mean, there's always going to be something left that hangs on right to the end of the month.
Yeah.
I'm very tempted to break out a camera actually.
Yeah, let's do it.
What I'm hoping is that rock there kind of nestles nicely in the foreground. It's quite angular, but against those soft hills in the background, I just love that juxtaposition. And I think the heather and the bilberry, whatever, it really provides that kind of link between the two, of the really, really hard and the really soft in the background. I won't be including much sky, but it's just such a lovely scene. There's some lovely light here, so I really like this. Anyway, I'll ditch my bag and have a look at it first. I think actually it's going to be from a bit further back, slightly longer lens. As always, I need to be standing in the void. We'll have a look. Just here, there are these angled rocks. You see the little lines coming through, but I don't have to be right on top of them. So, hence having a leg of a tripod right down there. But let's have a look. It's going to be. I'll have to just grab a camera out. The real deal. I think it's probably worth battling with my tripod. That's great, isn't it?
It's a rather long tripod. Fucking great.
Somewhere between 35 and 50 mil, I think. So on this occasion I'm going to use two. I think I'm probably going to need 4 stops, but so I'm using a 2-stop medium grad, which I'm going to bring down right into the top of the landscape below the horizon, slightly angled. And then I've got a 2-stop hard grad as well, which is just going to do the sky. I know a lot of people these days advocate just basically exposure bracketing, but I think actually, you can get it all in camera. You can do it in post-processing, can't you, effectively?
Yeah.
But I still like, if I can, to get it in camera. I had no choice with film. But, so I've got a tiny overexposure on top of that rock, which is what I thought. So I dropped the exposure by a third, just thinking that would just be enough. So I'm going to take it down another notch, and that should be fine then. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one at the back is a 2-stop soft, and that's going almost halfway down the image. So it's going right through the hills. It's going right down into the heather in the middle ground. And then the other one is a hard grad, and that's only over the sky.
So just spotted this piece of very well organised, well kempt piece of rock and heather that has Corndon Hill right in the background, but the really eye-catching thing about it is the way that the sunlight is catching the back of the heather and the back of the rock, so it's providing a really nice separation with the foreground, which actually is very similar to colour to the foreground, but that little rim light effect that that I'm getting from the sun in the background is giving me that. So let's try and frame this up. There is a little bit of an exposure difference, and there's a danger of lens flare with this backlight from the sun. And I'm thinking actually to make this lovely sort of fresh green, interesting kind of jigsaw puzzle rock, and then this heather here, which is full of bees. It's gorgeous. It's a real pastoral scene. But then actually on that foreground rock there, you've got those lovely grasses that are going to provide a bit of motion if they blow with the wind. So we'll try at 24mm first and see where we stand with everything. I'm going to do this as a vertical. Composition. And let's see what we've got in terms of the exposure difference. Yeah, I mean, straight away on the back of the camera, lovely mixture of stuff in the foreground. It looks like a bonsai mini little scene, because we've got lots of depth of field. There's a lot of lens flare, so I'm going to have to shield against all manner of stuff from the sun. I've got to polarise it because it's quite reflective, this rock, and it would be nice to see just the effect of whether we can retrieve some detail back with the polarizer. If not, it'll come straight off. Polarization is giving me a little bit of help with some of the over reflective bits on this quartz-like topping to this rock, so I'm going to leave that there. Not too fussed about. Luckily with the horizon line is very straight, so we can use a hard grad there, and I'm probably going to add another one as well, just explore this foreground even more, I think. No, I think I've got the right balance there. That tuft of heather's lovely. Check the focus on that as well. Yeah, nice and sharp. Nice and backlit. It looks like cotton grass on the back there. So we'll just take a long wander along the ridge, go up to the next tumulus. There's someone actually on the top there. Look. So it is a real antidote, this actually, to the last couple of times we've been here. Been quite uncomfortable, but this is just very nice, temperature-wise.
Yeah.
There's still a bit of wind, and actually the view is spectacular.
The last time, this is what's so strange, last time was actually in July, and I was absolutely frozen.
Yeah.
The wind was so bitter.
Yeah.
My hands went numb, my fingers went numb.
Yeah, I remember. And even with the sort of dip in light, it's more of a kind of magenta and orange kind of character to the light now.
Yeah.
It's still reflecting, and you're still getting texture and luminance from the rock, and actually even from the heather as well.
Yeah. I think even though the sun is now really getting weak, we're still casting a shadow. It's a soft shadow.
Yeah.
Do you know, I used to stand and look for that density of my shadow before I take a shot with the large format.
Yeah.
This is almost for me my favourite conditions. It's sunlit but really softly lit. here there is quartzite in the heather,
Yeah.
and those two things, when they both come into their prime, or when the heather comes into its prime, mixes with quartzite, and you get good light with that.
Yeah.
I think we've beyond any technical disasters, we may well have chosen exactly the right day. Well, you did actually.
The sort of theme of this really is, glow. Everything's glowing.
Yeah.
It feels hot as well. There's an amazing vibe. Birds of prey flying all around us.
If you look down on all those fields over there, the light is even right across, even on this side, away from the sun. There, isn't it? It's pretty strongly lit, isn't it? That's just this ambience.
So we just hot-footed it up to Devil's Chair, and the sun has just petered away into nothingness. Look at that though. There is hills there, isn't it? It's going behind some hills there. It just looks that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I wonder what that is. Yeah, it's very, very nice and very serene. And actually, so much less stressful without all of that freezing cold.
This has felt the most kind of, it's hard to describe it now. How I feel right now is pretty content.
Yeah. Yeah, it was an enjoyable evening's photography, I think.
Yeah.